All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode. I already messed it up. Everybody knows I do that on this part. Love HansenAthletics Radio. It's kind of a tongue twister. Today we have Chris on the podcast, so I'm going to give Chris a second to introduce himself, and then we will dive into it, folks.
My name is Chris Fry. I'm located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've been in the field for about 10 years now, coming up in May. Private sector, I've done some internships at Division I level at the University of Pittsburgh. And I'm also a full-time phys ed teacher. This is my 7th year teaching PE, middle school and elementary level so far. So yeah, that's pretty much my background. Been in the private sector of my own facility for the last 5 years, but 5 years before that I worked at a different private sector facility.
And you're probably a big fan of the Steelers, I'm
Big
assuming.
fan. Yeah, big fan of the Steelers.
You got a lot of professional sports teams going on there.
Yeah, they're not doing too good right now, any of them. But
Hey, in Idaho, all we have is Boise State, and that's 3 hours away from me.
yeah,
We don't have a professional team, so
yeah,
I don't feel bad for you. Cool, man. So, initially that having that diverse experience, like we typically, as coaches, we have one or the other experience. Like I've talked with PE teachers, people in the private sector, versus people working at the school or involved with the school. So let's hear, I would love to hear like a little bit of nuances between, which one you enjoy more, do you feel like, or are there unique things about each that you like?
yeah. In terms of the private side, I feel like most of the time when people are in here, they really want to be here. And the school side, it's tough because some kids really want to be there, but some kids also have no desire or care about being active or exercising or anything like that. Especially at younger age, middle school level, it's some of those kids don't want to do anything. That's one thing that's really different, I think, is just wanting to be here is really different in this private setting compared to school for the most part.
For sure. Are there some things you like about though, like being at the school and maybe having access to kids that might not make it into a private sector but do want to work
Yeah.
hard? Do you
Yeah,
see that?
I Yeah, for sure. I think in the school setting, getting to be around just a wide variety of students is really fun, but also seeing and allowing kids to see what they can do and accomplish in PE is always fun. Like there's some kids that don't really, they don't want to really be there, but if they do something and they accomplish something, whether it's just like getting a hit, and we played wiffle ball last week, so like getting a hit in wiffle ball was like for a third grader that's never played before is that's pretty cool. Like they can see that they can do that, and maybe that turns into something that they eventually like to do. So that part is rewarding
Yeah,
in
because
the school setting.
I'd highlight, like you said, like our facility. I do like the private sector because get like our kids want to be here. They want to work hard. There's not a lot of like hoorahing we have to do. Like they kind of all have a mission and a goal and feel somewhat dedicated to putting effort in. But I do think we've got to the point now where we have some athletes in here that actually don't play any sports and they just like what we do.
Mhm.
Uh, we have like even like a for example today did PR'd on his top mile per hour. Everybody was hyped up, but he's just on the debate team, so he's
Yeah,
a debater, but he's in here training, making sure physically he's on point, and that's really at the end of the day, like a lot of our athletes aren't going to get to go play college, like a lot of them want to, but I
hmm
think developing them to love taking care of their body and being explosive, being dynamic, it's going to carry over to everything else in their life and being able to do it for a long time. So,
yeah, for
but I do,
sure.
yeah, I do miss. Like, I think it'd be cool to have some opportunities to work with kids that don't even want to play sports. Just try to spread that message of like, man, you get one body, one shot.
hmm
You feel a lot better mentally when you are in better shape physically, and just opening that window for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another thing with the school setting too is you can expose kids to a lot of different activities, and maybe they're not a real active person or a real active kid, and they don't really like it that much, but you can help them find things that they do like or do enjoy, whether it's like pickleball or tennis or games like that that maybe they've never seen before that they can decide that they like, and that can be their road to becoming more active.
Yeah. I love that. With having a private facility and then working at the school, how does that relationship work? Do you ever run into, issues with having kids come over to your facility? Like, how does that all balance out?
No, so actually I'm pretty far away from the school that I work at. So whenever I initially started my facility, I started out of my garage and we lived in one place outside of Pittsburgh. And since then I moved facilities and I also moved houses. So I live in a different place now and I teach at a different school district. So I'm actually like 35, 40 minutes away from my school that I teach at. So it hasn't really ever been any problems or issues with that. I will say that I taught at a different school before my current school that I'm at now, and I do get a decent amount of kids from that school. Those kids were all in middle school whenever I had them. Now they're my first year there. Those kids just graduated high school last year, so I get some of those kids, and then I get some of the kids that I had in middle school. Now they're like in 10th, 11th, 12th grade. They come in. Now I have their football team comes in tonight. Actually, I've got about 20 of them that'll come in.
Yeah, that's awesome. So on that end, and that makes sense. Like, yeah, that's kind of a natural non-competition way to utilize both. Being on both ends of it, though, I saw that you put on here on this form, and it's always like a very it's either a great relationship or a tedious relationship, but between private facility and kind of like the team settings of high school athletes.
Hmm.
In your area, what do you see with that? And maybe you've been on a little bit of both sides of that. And what are some thoughts you have about balancing that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing really is obviously communicating with the kid, and see what they're doing. What are they getting out of going and working out with their school? And I always tell them, you like go with your school workouts. You have to do that. Like never not go to your school stuff to come here. But I'm sure there's things that you can get out of coming here that you're not getting at school. So communicating with them on that is super important. And I know some of the strength coaches at the local high schools that do come in. So we'll have a conversation. We talk about what they're doing there. But really the biggest thing is just seeing what each kid wants to get out of coming here, what they're not getting with their team. That's really seems to be the big thing
Yeah.
with that.
No, that makes sense. And there's, that my town, we're still, that relationship. We have good relationships with teams, and we have some that, they have their existing football slash strength coach, and it's just kind of a little bit more of a battle. And I think it's important, you know, number one, to work. It should be about the athlete, right? So I think
Mhm.
dropping the ego is sometimes pretty hard for coaches. Like, it should match what the athlete wants to do. Number one, what makes them the happiest and what keeps them healthy and successful. Like, I think you're right. Like, I never recommend my kids not to go to the high school training, but we've had, high school coaches saying, don't go there. So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
like, I wish it was a little bit more. And I think it's important, if you're listening to this and you are a sport coach or strength coach, like, that communication is huge. And then number two, just like keeping in mind that it's about the athlete and finding what works best for them, because there are different things that we can do at a private facility with small group training versus what you can do in a weight room with 40, 50 athletes and limited equipment. I mean, it sounds like you have a pretty good relationship there. Have you had to battle that at all?
No, not too much battle with their strength coach at the high school that I used to work at. I know what they do, so I try to work around what they're doing. Yeah, I try to work around. They don't do any speed or sprint work like off season, so they come to me and they do most of their stuff with that here. A couple kids will do some lifts that they're not getting in there, more so like accessory stuff like their adductors and their core and things like that. But they mainly just do kind of like the big lifts at school, and that's pretty much their off-season program. They don't do any running or anything or
Yeah.
speed work.
See,
So
and
we
that's
do that here.
yeah, and that's the benefit, I think, of like working together, because obviously you already know what he's doing. If that communication line's there, then we can fill those buckets that aren't getting touched, at the school. So obviously we find the same, like speed, even some plyometric work, like those aren't really getting
Hmm.
touched. And then we find too, there's not a lot of unilateral work being done. So we'll spend a lot of time on one leg. Are there
Hmm.
any other things that you've noticed, like at your facility, that like other buckets that you're filling? Like, you talked a little bit about like those small pieces, like the adductors, but do you find like a similar experience with the people you're working with?
Yeah. We do a lot of timing and stuff too, so that's something that the schools aren't really doing around here, it seems like. So we'll do a lot of speed timing and sprint timing and jump testing. So that just giving a better idea of where each kid is at is something that we really focus on as well.
Yeah, and that drives intent, right? And like
Absolutely.
ownership of the process. Like even growing up, we never timed anything. In college, we never timed anything. And now I'm like more obsessed with getting faster at 33 because I time everything. And just having like numbers and feedback and like goals. And I think for the jumping and for the sprinting, it's like I think it's imperative that you're giving these athletes feedback and they can see where they're at and they can, shoot to get better. And the progress just kind of exponentially grows from there, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll race, like kids will race each other all the time, and that just, they talk crap on each other and they race, and that's how they get better. So that's a huge piece here too. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well, one part of Hans Athletics Radio is, we're here to help athletes, coaches, and also parents. And one thing you shared that you thought could be beneficial is kind of them understanding the basic principles of training and programming, as well as more isn't always better. Can you expand on that?
yeah, just there's kids that and kids should be active. That's obviously like we all want them to be active and do what they can to improve and get better. But I don't know, 7-on-7 big there where you're at 7-on-7 football.
Starting to, yeah, it's here, but
Yeah,
it's get bigger
it's
for
like,
sure.
and that's great too. I think that helps a lot with recruiting. It seems like, but like I don't know, there's just kids that will be in 7-on-7 on all weekend, and they'll do like a speed training and their school lifting, and then they go to another speed lift thing, and then they come to me, and it's like you're doing these things 6 days a week. Like you're not getting any opportunity to rest. You're not allowing yourself to even get a chance to make improvements because you're just wearing yourself down so much. So I think that's one thing that's super, super important to understand. It's not like you said, or like I said, it all more isn't always better. It's what are you doing today that's going to help you for your sport is was really what you need to really think about. And it's, are you actually out of shape, or are you just beat down to the ground? Because I think that's a thing that happens a lot too. Is a football team will train all summer, and that first game comes and it's like we're out of shape. It's like you're not out of shape. You're going into the season where you're beat down to the ground because you've done so much all spring and all summer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I say this all the time. I'm like, I think it's imperative that you keep that mindset as a parent. Like a lot of times, honestly, it's a lot of there's a lot of parent pushing kids to do everything that everybody else is doing so that they can, you know, give them every opportunity to be as successful or whatnot. And I think it's just this kind of downward spiral. Like if your athlete's doing more training per week or more sessions than a professional athlete, like it's like it's a little backwards, right? Like you're a youth athlete, you're playing more games, you're in club soccer, you're doing basketball open gyms, and you're in track and field. It's
Hmm.
like you're working more than a professional athlete. You're not recovering like a professional athlete, and you're definitely probably not eating and sleeping like you should be, right? So
Right.
I think that it's tough for parents to be say no to some stuff, but I think at the end of the day, like the most successful athletes we've had are the ones that are very focused on, putting in high efforts, but also understanding like we have to recover just as hard. uh,
Hmm.
I always like when I have a kid coming for assessment, we always go through, say, we just give them this analogy of like, let's say you trained 20 hours this week, right? But you only slept 6 hours a night and you're not eating enough food. It's like, okay, you trained 20. Let's say you're actually only benefiting from 10 of those hours, right? So you just
Hmm.
wasted 10 hours because you can't really adapt to the work that you're putting in. And you have a higher risk of injury. And who knows how much time that can cut out, like if an injury occurs, right? But let's say you give yourself that rest day, you're going to bed on time, you're sleeping 8 to 10 hours, you're putting Fortnite down, you're getting off TikTok, you're eating more food than you want to eat. And from there, it's like, okay, now you just capitalize on 18 of those 20 hours. So, you're 8 hours ahead of your peer that went to everything that you went to, but didn't take the time to, or just put the focus in on, we got to recover. And so, as you understand the human body, it's like, that's arguably more important than the training itself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool, man. I'm glad we're on the same page with that one. It seems like
Yeah.
most of the coaches in the private sector were like, man, this is getting out of control.
Yeah, and I think it's coming up more and more now too, because there's everything has travel now. Like 7-on-7 is newer, but there's like we have a travel baseball team that uses our facility, so I see what they do, and then there's travel soccer and there's travel lacrosse. Every sport has that travel year round season now, which is I mean it's not really new now, but it's getting becoming bigger and bigger for each athlete it seems.
Yeah, honestly, it's like I just see this wave of, well, two things. Number one, I think when I was younger in high school in 2010, like you only played travel basketball if you were like the top dog on your team and you were trying to, really get recruited. Like you were
Hmm.
crushing it, you were beating everybody, you were the number one, number two on your team, and they only had teams available for like that really high level developed player. And I think what people found out is, man, we can make a ton of money on this. And so they've opened up team. Like I have kids that don't make the basketball team or don't even play, but they all are on like travel AAU teams or whatever. And
Hmm.
it's like now they have leagues for everyone, which can be cool. Like if you don't make the team, it can give you a chance to develop and come back the next year. But it seems like everybody's just jumping into doing all of it. It's kind of, yeah, I kind of see some of it and I think like, man, this is really kind of just a money grab in my
Yeah.
opinion.
For sure.
So that's one of those like two main things I've noticed is just like if your athlete's not making the basketball team, also it's worth looking at, is this a skill issue or is this a physical, like are they fast enough? Do they
Mhm.
have physical capacity to display athleticism on the court? And I think sometimes, athletes get pinned in just trying to play all this sport, play more games, play more games, play more games. But the issue isn't the fact that they're not good enough at basketball. It's that they don't have that big bowl or breadth of capacity physically to capitalize on the skills that they have in sport.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Do you see that? Do you see that with your athletes as well?
Yeah, for sure. That's what whenever this first the first meeting that we had with the travel team that uses our space, two of my baseball guys were here working out, and they both play in college. And one of them one of them's like 6'4", 230, and the other one's 6'3", 215. They're both pitchers. They're both lefties. And then that was right after their freshman year of high school. So it wasn't like they were 3 years into college. They were fresh out of high school. It's like this is what a college baseball player looks like. Like these guys are 6'2", 6'3". They are 215 plus pounds. They've been working out strength training with here for 2 years since they were sophomores in high school. Like this is what you have to be. You can't really be like 150 pounds. It's not going to really work for you.
Yeah. And honestly, like, been doing this for over 13, 14 years. Like that's one of the first thing that coaches look at is, do they have the right size? Like, are they physically capable of competing at this level? And a
Hmm.
lot of times size, strength, speed, those are going to be what kind of puts you in the buckets of, if you do go to college sport, are you a D1 size athlete? Are you a D2? Like, how developed are you physically?
Hmm.
Like, they don't care how, I mean, yeah, you can be like, they can take somebody that's got the right size and build and has put the work in on the physical side and get them a lot better in the skill quickly, but or at least more quickly than they can take an athlete that hasn't been putting in the work, is undersized, underweight, hasn't been in a weight room, doesn't know how to sprint, is slow. Like it's going to take them a lot longer to develop an athlete
Hmm.
in that regard because that's a slow developing process, which we know. Like because we have parents come in and be like, "And my athlete be here in 2 months?" It's like, no, your athlete can probably be there in like a year and a half. Like
Yeah.
so
Right.
it takes a long time for the body to adapt. And I think kids that are serious about get recruited, like that's one of the first places they should look is like, which sport am I going to genetically am I going to fit into the best in terms of like meeting the size requirements? And then developing those capacities, physical capacities that then they can build their skill upon.
Mhm.
That's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another point with the AAU I wanted to get into, and it's interesting to me, is like we went through this whole phase of like, like people love kids that play multiple sports. Like you hear all the time, like we recruit kids because they play multiple sports. I just feel like now it's becoming almost impossible with the way that the AAU and the clubs and all this is set up. Is I feel like athletes have to specialize a little bit earlier,
Mhm.
which can be fine, but I just want parents like listening, and like it's like nowadays I truly think like if you're going to play a college sport, by junior or senior year, you kind of have to have that one sport picked out and you're going hard on that, and you're making sure you have an off season built in and not playing another sport, and kind of focus on that one sport. Sure, you can play like another sport, but you can't do, like, in my opinion, you can't do two club sports at the same time your whole career, and be as good or as good as you could be headed into the college level. Do you see
Yeah,
these?
I agree with that, and I think that's kind of where we can kind of come into place with that. We can kind of replace that other sport by, developing change of direction skills, developing sprint skills, developing coordination. Like those are things that, yeah, you'll get with playing another sport, but you also can train those and become better at those in a place like here or what you have going on over there. So I think that can replace that, but I do see I see some kids that are had a girl playing travel soccer and travel lacrosse, and she was playing with her school lacrosse team too, and it's like that's a
Yeah,
lot. Like I don't know.
for sure. Like, yeah, you would be better off like focusing on one, and then like you said, we can hit a lot of those. Like the benefit of multiple sports, you know, back in the day was just different movement qualities being developed and moving differently. Because if you just played one sport your whole life and you only rotated one way, and you only did, baseball, you only threw with one side, you only rotate that, you hit that way. Like, yes, that can lead to overuse injuries, burnout, issues down the road. But we are able to, counteract that in your facility if you're in a good facility, and also work on, like you said, change direction, you know, top speed sprinting, dynamic movements, like getting them. We play games all the time, like reacting to other athletes and being able to make decisions in real time. Like
Mhm.
you can get a lot of that in the weight room or in the facility, and really build upon, those things that they're not getting in the sport, and then allow them to have some. We can do that intelligently, volume wise, so then we can allow the athlete to recover and continue to progress throughout their high school career.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so two questions I always ask to my guests is, what is something you have changed your mind about that is significant in your career?
Yeah, I would say like periodization and programming. Being in this setting, the private setting, there are a lot of different factors that go into kids getting in here, but they're going to sign up for coming in 2 days a week or 3 days a week or however many days a week, but the likelihood of that happening consistently is pretty low. Just things coming up with school, with home life, with work, whatever it might be. So before I would always be like, oh, I need to create a 12-week program for each kid that comes in, and it's like they're just not really they're gonna miss some. They're gonna miss. So I've changed my mind on programming 12 weeks at a time or 8 weeks at a time. It's still progressive and it's still a program that the kids follow, but I more so am programming whatever they have going on a weekly or daily basis instead of this is what we're going to do for the next 12 weeks and this is what it has to be. So learning to be more adaptable with that has been a big change on my end for sure.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's like reality, and I think as coaches develop and spend more time in the field, that's always where we end up. Is, you're taught that, you need to have periodized training. It needs to look like this. It needs to follow progression. But at the end of the day, like once you get a lot of hours on the floor, you work with a lot of athletes. Yeah, actually, I think the best coaches are the ones that are able to intake information on where that athlete's at that day, what they had going on before, and then be able to stay within a plan, but modify that plan to fit the athlete, and get the most out of what you can get that day, even if that's like, we're just chilling, working on movement, and trying to recover a little bit. So I truly believe that, in the private sector, an athlete needs to walk out your doors feeling better than they did coming in, especially if you want them to be consistent and, coming in the facility. They can't be crushed. They come in and you're like, well, you have to fit into what we wrote for this block. So, and then send them out crushed after,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that,
there's just too many different things that go on within a school day or sport practice that it's just too hard to like have that. You have like a skeleton program or an outline of a program, and you fill in the spaces for what each kid needs, but it's always going to change. Like I had a kid a couple weeks ago. He was a wrestler, and he was supposed to come in at 6 o'clock, and he texted me at like 5:45. It's like, hey, we had to stay at practice late. I'm not going to make it. A kid dumped a can of beans on the coach's car, so he made us stay after and run. So it's like you never know what's going to affect a kid coming into the gyms.
do you, in your facility, do you have any technology pieces that you use to kind of facilitate that?
Facilitate.
Just like modifying training or finding ways to like build around where the athlete's at that day.
Oh yeah, we have a treadmill, so we can get a good read on what kids are at, and if they're normally at a certain number and they're super low, or they run one that's relatively similar to what they do, and then their second one is super slow, I'll cut them off. We time our sprints with Dasher, and then we have a skyhook jump pad as well that we'll throw them on and jump. So yeah, I can see and I'll change things based on that. But most of the time they tell me if they're tired or they're sore or what they did the day before, and I'll make sure we're not doing anything the same or too much that is going to negatively impact them.
Yeah, that's what I love about the tech side too. Like honestly, the most is, I've had athletes come in and say like they feel crushed, and then they test really well. Like whether, because sometimes we'll do a vertical jump as a readiness test. We have a shred
Mhm.
as well. Um, but there's like this two tier factor of like, okay, here's what the athlete's telling me, the information, and 90% of the time they're right. But then let's say, you get into the workout, you got a little bit of testing going on. And you're like, actually, you're firing pretty good today. Like this might be more on the mental side. Like, so let's get a win here. And then they
Yeah.
happen that I've had athletes PR on those days, like, and then walk out with a big smile on their face. Like, I think it can be huge for that. And then I think we use a little bit of bar velocity tracking, because I think on the strength work side, outside of that periodization, it's kind of, I just call it fluid periodization, where they're supposed to front squat today. We're going to stick with the plan. They haven't front squatted in a while, but we're going to use velocities and give them a certain velocity to hit. And if they're super under recovered, the weight's going to be really light, and if they're feeling good, it's going to be heavy. So it just gives
Yeah.
the athlete room to like move within the session and the plan and match where they're at, but feel good about it and not feel like, oh, I didn't hit 85% for 3 today, so I suck. Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
no, you hit the speed. Like it doesn't matter what the weight was. You hit the speed that we wanted. It's perfect. So
Yeah. I have a velocity thing too. I haven't gotten into it yet. I got it at the end of last summer. It was like right after all my college guys went back to school. So I was like, and then I haven't messed with it yet. Hopefully I'm going to do it before they get back so I can use it this summer, but I haven't gotten into it yet.
yeah, it's pretty cool to see where the tech pieces are getting easier and easier and cheaper too. Like we have the OVR. We used to
Mhm.
do output sports, but now we just got the OVR ones. They're like $250. You buy them one time, and you snap them on. They stay on the bar, and you can just, it has a digital reader on it, so they can just see what they hit each rep. You don't have
Mhm.
to change it per athlete. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. I love the tech stuff. It gets me pretty fired up because then you can just easily show a kid like, hey, this is where you were, this is what you're at now. If it's better, if it's worse, why is it worse? Why is it better? What did we do? Like I'm real into that right now for sure. Is the tech stuff.
Yeah, lot more context with training and the ability to help athletes get to where they want to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Last question is, what rabbit hole are you currently down?
Um, well, I feel like I go down too many rabbit holes sometimes on Twitter, so that kind of bothers me. I'm sure you've probably been there.
Twitter's
You see
crazy,
so
bro.
many. What's
Yeah,
that?
the Twitter's crazy.
Oh yeah, you just look at Twitter and it's there's just so many people doing so many good things and you're like, I'm not doing that, I need to do that, or oh, I'm not doing this, I need to do that. So that bothers me or messes with me a lot. So I guess I don't know if that's a rabbit hole, but that's one thing that kind of messes with me. But then in terms of like learning and rabbit hole that way, Tony Villani and Tony Holler, like I'm all about like just speed right now, just trying to learn and know as much as possible about that. And so I got my treadmill in December. Before that, I was just part of his. He actually spoke in Pittsburgh last summer, Tony Villani, at the Sportsmith conference. And so I saw him there, and then I was in the XP web thing that the $10 a month thing that he puts out. Uh, so I was just like really into that, and then that kind of led to me getting the treadmill. So just mainly him, and the feed the cat stuff is great. So I'm just trying to figure out where to add things from both uh, to my day to day stuff.
Yeah, I love both Tonys. I know both of them, and they're both putting out great information. And there's validity to both of the messages they're sharing, and they actually go together when people understand more about it and
Mhm.
getting athletes fast, and then also teaching them how to use and control that speed on the field. So I do think speed is huge. I think, you know, 8 years ago we were training our athletes primarily lifting, and I'll say now my athletes we lift less and we're stronger, and we move the bar faster because we sprint
Yeah,
consistently. So
yeah,
sprinting is
that's
obviously the ultimate form of athleticism, in my opinion.
yeah. No, that's I agree. I tell my kids that all the time. It's yeah, I want this number to go down, and I want you to become faster, and we care about that. But it's also making you more powerful. Like you're stronger now because you're faster. Like I tell
Yep.
them that all the time.
Yep. I mean, I have my swimmer sprint, my
Yeah,
cheerleader sprint,
I have
everyone.
a golfer that sprints. He's like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, I golf a lot, and the faster I get, the further I hit the ball. So
Yeah,
all about it. I also think there's a little bit of value to like kind of where you started off with that for coaches listening and parents and anyone on social media, athletes, I guess, are on there too, is, learning how to create a filter for, things you see, like being open to seeing stuff done a little bit different than you, but also being able to, you know, create a process or at least be cognizant of, this is what they're doing. This is what I'm doing. I'm successful. What could I take from this and put into it, but not changing what you have that's working and trying to just copy what someone's doing out there and putting it on social media because their setting might be different. Their pool of athletes might be different. Their athlete itself, if it's a parent posting stuff about their kids, everything can be taken with a different context. And it's just really hard for people to not just try to like pull and try to do all this random stuff from what they're seeing online. So I think
yeah,
that's super valuable.
absolutely, absolutely true.
Cool, man. Well, if they're listening to this episode and they want to, check you out, give you a follow, learn a little bit more about you, where can the listeners head to find you?
Yeah, Instagram is my main source of content. And that's just Fry Performance Training on there. And then Twitter, I'm on there a little bit. That's just Fry Performance. So I'm on both things.
Okay, perfect. And I will put those in the show notes as well. Perfect. Well, Chris, I appreciate you hopping on the episode and hopefully that helps some people out there.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.